Salt is one of the biggest metrics we can use when building decks in Magic the Gathering. Salt is a player-formed metric that represents the opinion of a card to the community. EDHREC is one of the most amazing resources for Commander players, and they are the ones that take the community opinion and assigns all those Salt scores to every Magic card. This is going to be the first episode of my series about making Commander more fun, and I'm going to help you understand Salt and how you can use it to make your next games more fun. The origin of Salt scores comes from EDHREC, who in 2019 started collecting information for Salt ratings. In the last few years, we've received support on all of our favorite deck building websites showing you Salt ratings in real time. Salt is the rating given by players to reflect how they feel about a certain card. The higher the Salt score, the saltier the card. The most salty cards can range from extra turn spells, token doublers, and the saltiest cards being land destruction. To get an idea of what Salt is, let's look at the 10 most salty cards from 2022 and see what similarities they have. First up, at number 1 we have Stasis with a Salt rating of 2.92, Winter Orb with a Salt rating of 2.91, Static Orb with a Salt rating of 2.71, Vorinclex Voice of Hunger with a Salt rating of 2.60, Expropriate with a Salt rating of 2.52, Armageddon with a Salt rating of 2.47, Thassa's Oracle with a Salt rating of 2.43, Yokolops with a Salt rating of 2.4, Obliterate with a Salt rating of 2.39, and Devastation with a Salt rating of 2.39. Looking at the top 10 saltiest cards, we definitely see some similarities. 4 of the top 10 destroy all lands, 4 prevent players from untapping lands and or permanents, 1 of them gets extra turn spells or they steal your stuff, and lastly we have a win con card. You can clearly see where players have their priority when it comes to cards they don't like seeing. Most of these cards also have not been printed in such a long time, most players today wouldn't have even run into them before. As you continue down the list, you will begin to see a lot more cards focusing around land destruction, extra turn spells, commander creatures that are just too overpowered, all sorts of stuff like that makes sense why players don't like seeing these. And while Salt on the higher end can be a really good indicator, when you start getting to the lower end of power-wise, it doesn't really tell you as much. For example, all the basic land cards have a set Salt score, but islands have an abnormally high Salt score. Islands have a 0.72 Salt score, whereas a forest has a 0.41 Salt score, and swamps, mountains, and plains all have 0.31 for their Salt score. In my opinion, basic lands shouldn't have any Salt score at all, because they don't do anything other than let you cast your spells. And in the case of islands, by the time you add your 15, 20, 30 islands to your deck, your Salt rating of your deck overall is artificially inflated based on the sheer fact that islands have a pretty high Salt score. While some colors of Magic have more high Salt sum cards, like blue, green conversely has some of the least salty cards, but the Salt sum should be way higher in my opinion. Green has more abilities that players enjoy, so the Salt score of those cards end up being far lower even though their value is incredibly powerful, especially if you're not playing a green deck. You can kind of get outpaced very easily. Salt and power don't always correlate, but some strategies involving more salty cards can get annoying to play against. If you've checked out some of the decks that I build for this channel, you can see that most of them range on the low to average side as long as Salt ratings go, but that doesn't mean they're weak decks. For example, Lightpaws Emperor's Voice is an Aura Commander deck that I built while I was covering Aura cards and how they work. This might be one of the nastiest decks I've ever created and played against. There are a lot of old white Aura enchantment cards that just give you protection from everything. An almost completely invulnerable commander that can kill any player in a single hit. I really despise playing against this commander, and the deck has a Salt sum of 26, which is 10 under the average. I wanted to point this out to not confuse players that Salt score doesn't always equal power. In this case, all of the cards surrounding it aren't salty and the commander just amplifies their power so much that it really becomes a pain to play against. Now that we have a good understanding of Salt, how some cards can be salty while not being as powerful as other cards that aren't salty, how can we use this information to determine how to make your commander games more fun? Well, most of the best deck building websites work with EDHREC to give players immediate feedback as they're building their decks of how salty it's becoming. My favorite deck building website, Archideck, is amazing and can even break down the cards into different Salt categories so you can see, well, these ones are in this range and then you have your saltiest cards over here. From here, I can see the salt of the deck as it's coming together and kind of make some adjustments to it as I see cards that maybe I shouldn't add in this deck because it's going to get frustrating to play against. Certain cards have this inherent saltiness to them that you can't really change. In Commander, it's a general taboo to not destroy all land. You know, maybe one or two here and there, but usually there's a replacement effect. But if you play something like Armageddon and wipe everybody's boards of lands, they're going to get awfully mad at you because usually if you're playing that spell, you're going to be the player who can rebuild the fastest from it. Why not play other kind of board wipes that get rid of everything, like Farewell or Austerior's Command? These are great board wipes that are generally pretty accepted in Commander, but kind of do the same effect without putting everybody back to the Stone Age and basically restarting the game from zero. On a similar note, I know most players, including myself, aren't a big fan of mass bounce spells like Cyclonic Rift that return everything to their opponent's hands. It's kind of just frustrating, and in my opinion, if you are not going to win the game that turn, you shouldn't play that spell. So while Cyclonic Rift itself is a salty card, if you can put yourself in a position where, okay, if I cast this I'm going to win, why not do that? If the game's going to be over, nobody's going to care about all the cards they got in their hand. Nobody wants to have to recast all their stuff, except maybe the enchantment player. As you're building and playing your deck, take into consideration the reaction from your opponents to see if a spell you cast put them off in any way. The last thing I want to do is make everybody concede because they aren't having fun anymore. Another good way to find out if a card is too salty for a certain play group or situation is how everybody at the table reacts. If you cast Armageddon, does everyone sigh and look upset? Well, then maybe that's not the right place or time to play that card. The last thing you want is for that memory to be the last thing that group of player remembers about you, so the next time you go to play, maybe they don't want to play with you. Cards are salty for a reason, and if you play too many of them, people are just going to say, I don't want to have that experience again, and maybe leave you out, which is a terrible feeling to have. As an example of this, for a while I played in a Commander League, and every week we would play and earn points for winning and some other categories, and I did pretty good. I think I came third overall, and I made some really good friends. I didn't win most of my games, but because I was friendly and people liked my decks, you know, I got a lot of bonus points from everybody for, hey, you were fun to play against, and I really enjoyed that. The player that did end up winning the tournament, on the other hand, was playing pretty ruthlessly and played the same exact deck every week. Everybody was so fed up with him that even if we had time after a game before the next match started to, you know, get a few rounds in, we really didn't want to invite him to play again because it was just such a bad experience the first time. You neither want to be that person or have that person at your table. So be kind when you're designing your next deck. Salt is a great way to start designing your deck and figuring out whether or not your deck is going to be fun to play again, but should not be the only thing you consider when building your deck. Thank you so much for watching, and this is the first video in my series trying to help players understand Commander better and learn how to have more fun, because at the end of the day, we're all here trying to have fun. If you have any suggestions on topics you want me to cover regarding making Commander more fun, or other topics in general, please leave it in the comments down below. Or if you just want to leave a like and say hi, I'd appreciate that too. Today's Scryfall card of the day is Foxfire Oak. The brethren shall blaze with unnatural fire. In the flames shall consume and purify our rage. Treefolk, Catastrophe Myth. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you later, Planeswalkers.